Hello, everyone. Portland State University is located in the heart of downtown Portland, Oregon, in Multnomah County. We honor the indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on: the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, Lala bands of the Chinook, the Tualatin Kalapuya, and many other indigenous nations of the Columbia River. It is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and to recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their descendants. We are honored to have members of these nations in attendance today, as well as members of Native communities from across Oregon and the country. My name is Mariana Ramirez, and I'm the director of the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art at Portland State University. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our conversation with Marie Watt, Jordan Schnitzer, and our performance with Acosia Red Elk. Following her performance, we will adjourn to the museum for a reception, where you will be able to view our gorgeous exhibition, Storywork, The Prince of Marie Watt, from the collections of Jordan Schnitzer and his family foundation. Before I introduce today's speakers and performer, I would like to thank our sponsors, Jordan Schnitzer and his family foundation, and the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation. We are so grateful. Where are you, Jordan? We are so grateful to you for supporting not only this program today, but also the stunning exhibition at the museum, as well as the many programs here at Portland State University and across Portland, our city. So thank you so much for all of your support. I am also grateful to the Richard and Helen Phillips Charitable Foundation and the JSMA Exhibition Circle for providing additional support for our programming. The museum has come a long way in the 6 years we've been around. I am so proud of our exhibitions and programming, which would not be possible without our amazing staff. I would like to thank Kathleen Murney, Alexis Garcia, Estella Garzone, and our amazing student staff for making today possible. Thank you all very much. Jordan Schnitzer is a West Coast businessman, philanthropist, and Art News Top 200 globally recognized art collector. He shares his private contemporary art collection with museums and institutions across the world. Art played a major role in Jordan's childhood, as his mother, Arlene Schnitzer, owned the first contemporary art gallery in Portland. In 1997, he founded the Jordan Schnitzer Family Foundation to share artworks from his collections. Today, he is regarded as one of North America's foremost print collector, and his collections of thousands of artworks include deep holdings of sculptures, paintings, glass, and mixed media. He is president and CEO of Schnitzer Properties, one of the top 10 private real estate owners in the Western U.S. Jordan has been collecting Marie Watt's work for over 20 years. He founded the Jordan Schnitzer Printmaking Residency at the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology, where Marie was one of the first residents in 2002. Please join me in welcoming Jordan Schnitzer. Acosia will be joining us later, but I'm going to give you her bio now. Acosia Red Elk is an enrolled member of the Umatilla Tribe from Northeastern Oregon, a 10-time World Champion Jingle Dancer and world-renowned performing artist. Acosia is also an International Yoga and Dance Instructor, entrepreneur, film producer, snowboard instructor, glass artist, cultural teacher, and wellness advocate. She frequently travels the world performing tribal dance as well as sharing cultural knowledge, movement, and meditation. Acosia is the creator of Powwow Yoga, a fusion practice that brings together tribal dancing and yoga for a well-rounded workout with an indigenous approach to wellness. She won the Doris Duke Foundation Artist Award in 2024, recognizing her as one of the most influential dance artists in America. This is only awarded to 6 artists a year. Most recently, she opened 7 Gen Wellness in downtown Pendleton, where she offers classes, workshops, and retreats for community members. Thank you, Acosia. And Now, Marie Watt was born in Seattle and is a member of the Turtle Clan of the Seneca Nation of Indians with German and Scottish ancestry. While she's an internationally recognized artist, she is also our hometown girl, having lived in Portland for 30 years. Instead of giving you a bio, I'm just going to tell you about Marie's last 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, the Regional Arts and Cultural Council announced it had commissioned Marie to create a large-scale, site-specific sculpture for our beautiful Portland International Airport. Visitors from around the world will be greeted by her work when coming to Portland. Last week, the Obama Foundation announced that Marie Watt was selected, along with Nick Cave, to create a monumental multimedia textile installation that will be featured in the lobby of the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago. I know. On Tuesday, it was announced that Marie Watt has been elected to the National Academy of Design class of 2025. Also on Tuesday, we learned that Marie is the recipient of the very prestigious Heinz Award, which celebrates the extraordinary achievements of individuals making contributions to the arts, economy, and environment. And today, she's joining us for an intimate talk amongst a few friends. Please join me in welcoming Marie Watt.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for being here. This is so exciting that all of you turned out to really meet someone whose success just didn't come overnight. And I think that's one reason I have such respect for her as an individual and an artist. I first started buying her work from Crow Shadow, the amazing facility over on the Confederated Reservation that James Lavador started 50 years ago. And there's a spectacular James Lavador exhibition at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art in Eugene. You all should see, it's that amazing. And I first got her work there, and we've been buying it ever since for 20, 25 years, whatever. And also thanks to Jane Beebe at PDX Gallery, that I'm sure you're here someplace, that's done a fabulous job of representing her. And having had a mother that had a gallery in Portland, it's a tough job here. And she's been undaunting in terms of being a great supporter of your work, and she's helped me with our collection, and we're honored to have all of your work in it. To start off, I think the approach I want to take is the curators can talk to you a lot about the art, and we'll get to that, but really about who this person is. So start off about growing up and your family and school, and tell us about your early years.
Well, I think as a kid, I just knew what was around me, which was, my parents who are here today. I was raised in a family where I was encouraged to be creative and play outside. My mom used to have my sister and I finger paint with chocolate, pudding. I also enjoyed ceramics and just making things. I don't know that I knew I was headed on the path of becoming an artist. But one thing I can point back to in this moment, maybe my art school began with my family and my mom working in Indian education, which she worked in for about 27 years. I think one thing that's important to know is that I am a citizen of the Seneca Nation of Indians, but our tribe is located in western New York, just a little bit outside of Buffalo. And so I grew up, though, in the Pacific Northwest. And so I was very engaged in my mom's programming. And one thing that my dad likes to remind me, though, is I often did not want to attend that programming. True to form for, I don't know, right now I have a teenage daughter, and I understand that. So, but I will say one thing that was super formative then is my mom started a storytelling circle program, and it was really for the youth that she served, and then parents were included, and younger siblings were included, and grandparents started attending, and just other actual elders in the community, and it was in this this circle where we learned to share our stories. And part of this is important because a lot of us were far away from home. We were in this urban Indian setting or in an urban area. And I think it's important to know some of the policies that were happening at that time. You know, there was the Indian Child Welfare Act hadn't come about, so Native kids were being forcibly adopted into non-Native families. And there was the relocation program that was where the federal government was trying to basically shut down reservations and like move people into major cities. And so there was a lot of people in these urban areas that didn't have that kind of same community safety net. And I think that, and also we grew away at some distance from our family. And so I think that the thing that my parents created for me and my sister is like they really built this community and they showed me the importance of it. And I feel like that like is like a really important part of my practice today. And I just really want to give a shout out to my team or my band, as that's like my band. And I like to refer to them as like the brain trust, but I work collaboratively and I have like this lovely group of people who have been in my life over this arc of time. And that's something I didn't anticipate in my work, but it's something that I've really benefited from and feel strengthened by.
So I can see already we were a bit different because when we made chocolate pudding at home, I was so busy licking my fingers instead of making them. But for those of you that have not seen the Oregon Public Broadcasting show about this state and the school in Salem and what the policies were about the tribes and the kids, you really need to see that wonderful documentary. It is tragic and heartbreaking, and what's frightening is, as we get older, it wasn't that many years ago. So you should all look that up and go online and see that show. So did you start really when did you decide you wanted to be an artist?
I think before I went to college, I thought I maybe wanted to be an architect, but it wasn't until I went to Willamette University and was able to take an art class because it was a liberal arts college, and that was one of the core requirements. And I think where I fell in love with art was probably in the print shop at Willamette University in a class that was taught by James Thompson, who has since passed away. But that kind of was the beginning.
And then you ended up going to Yale and got an MFA in painting and printmaking. Talks about that experience of coming from Oregon to the leading universities in the country and art centers.
Yeah, I mean, I will say in between Willamette and Yale, I went to this place called the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I think that was really informative for me. One thing that struck me at Willamette, it's really when you leave home that you start thinking about what home is. And for me, I realized that I was looking for the Native community and not really finding it at Willamette. And so that, in time, I learned about the Institute of American Indian Arts and went to school there and got an associate's degree. And so by the time I went to Yale, it was a huge culture shock because in Santa Fe, there's just this rich history of indigenous people coming together there, not just the tribes that are already in that space, but also, a lot of urban indigenous people too, like moving there from other places. So going to Yale was it's a place where I feel like I sort of learned how to develop my voice, but I also think that there's a lot of things, like looking back, that I wish I had spoken up about, if that makes sense. It was a complicated time. I actually would say that I was at Yale at a time where there was the first tenured female faculty. So that just gives you context.
Were there any of your professors at Yale that you remember that really influenced you, that you looked up to, or any of your fellow students that you admired their work and maybe you've stayed in touch with?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I recently saw your Mel Bachner exhibition, and Mel was like a visiting critic along with Frances Barth and also Sylvia Plummock Mangold. So those were a few people who really were there at that time whose conversation and challenges I enjoyed.
So you finish at Yale, and then you do what next?
What did I do next? I moved to Oregon. And I started teaching at Portland Community College. And talk about formative experiences. I had the great pleasure of becoming friends with Bob DeZono, who has recently passed away. But he was not just a friend, he was a mentor and really a fierce advocate for me being like at faculty at PCC, but also just a huge, supporter. And I feel like I learned a lot from Bob, but also just from teaching at PCC. I think that one of the things I love about community colleges is I'm a huge fan of Joseph Beuys, and he, German artist, and he liked to say that people who want to teach should come together with people who want to learn, and he believed in this idea of a free university. And I feel like our community colleges are like kind of emulate that. And one thing that was great about teaching in the art department at PCC, Sylvania campus, is that the median age of students, I would say, was like a little like early 20s to 30s. And so if you were like if you're predispositioned to kind of act a little bit more young, you actually kind of had to meet the median age in the classroom. And people who were taking art classes, they wanted to be there. It wasn't a requirement to be there. And I will say, like, I think PCC instructors are so great. And I always like to remind people that there's good educators in every institution, and then there's probably a few people who are like a few rotten apples. And the truth of the matter is, it's like actually at PCC, those students, like, they're paying for their education out of their own pocket. They're working hard to be there. And I'll tell you, they're the hardest working students, but like you also, if you're not doing your job, you're gonna be called on it. And I think that's awesome.
What were your classes that you taught? What were they?
Well, I taught painting and drawing and the whole basic design sequence, starting with black and white, color, and 3D. I think that strangely enough, the class that like led to me like figuring out how to be a full-time working artist, one thing was like a role model, and that was Jim Lavador, because he was doing it. But the other thing that really helped me is I taught a class called Artist Skills and Practical Issues. And one thing I feel with MFA programs and just art programs in general is that there's this emphasis on the making and the critical discourse and conversations, but maybe there's not as much emphasis of like, how do you actually take what you learn and what you love in the context of that space, and how do you make a life of it? Like, how do you get to keep doing it? And I think that we don't have those discussions in art school. It changes a little bit, and it's actually kind of like one thing that's sad to me is that the institution that was having that conversation here in Oregon was the Oregon College of Arts and Crafts.
You were married, had a child, and were teaching and being an artist, right?
Married, teaching, so I had a sabbatical at PCC, and I used that time to prepare for an exhibition at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian at their George Gustav High location. And I came back from my sabbatical with our firstborn daughter. And then I finished my sabbatical obligations, because you can't just be like, wow, this is great, see you later. So I finished the sabbatical obligations, and then I took a year's leave of absence and realized that I was just starting to make enough off of like a little bit off of grants, and I was tracking my income, and I was just like incrementally making a little more money. But then you also, for working parents, you all know this, it's like you have to figure out like childcare is very expensive. So that becomes part of the math of like whether or not like how you're going to juggle things. So my husband Adam and I decided that that maybe I was just getting enough momentum that I might be able to like actually sort of be able to do what I'm doing full time.
So two things. One, being an art teacher for some years, how do you think that influenced you as an art maker?
Well, I mean, I think being an art instructor probably like gave me more confidence with like public speaking situations. But I would also just say like I realize like I kind of come from a family of educators, or like my mom is a storyteller, so there's that like that aspect of it. The one thing that was really formative at PCC, we went to this in-service day and they had like 4 people who were all acknowledged by their peers as being really great educators. And what they all had in common is they were good storytellers. And actually this was really helpful for me because I actually was having a lot of anxiety and questions of whether or not I was like up to the task of being a good teacher. But I realized, well, I know what storytelling is, and I know I can do that. And that kind of that made me feel actually a lot more comfortable with this, like with that title of being a teacher or professor.
We'll talk about your art in a little bit. Some of it's going to be on the screen, but what were your themes then, and how have they changed, and how have you grown as an artist? And tell us about those first steps to sort of being a full-time artist. Well, yeah. Mom and wife too, but right when you sort of cut back on the teaching, what was your art like?
Well, I mean, I think when I left New Mexico and went to Connecticut, I like tried to find the Native community there, and it wasn't accessible. Like I couldn't find it, and that too has changed. But I started using materials that I associated with, with objects that I've grown up with. So like I started using corn husks because I was thinking about these corn husk masks. And I started looking at these husks and thinking about, like, one thing that's important to know, I guess, is in our community, corn is one of the 3 sisters. There's corn, beans, and squash. And they're grown together on a mound that is similar to a turtle's back. And corn has the stalk that beans can climb. Beans actually provide nitrogen to the soil, and squash creates this broad leaf covering which sort of keeps the soil moist and kind of protects it. And when they're working together or in community, they thrive, right? And so I think, like, for me, though, I was starting to just use materials as a way of like, the materials I was using were kind of conceptual and storied, and that was the beginning. So it was like I was making work with corn husks and doing drawings that were also kind of pointing to the husks.
Let's talk about your art a bit and break into sort of different areas. Let's talk about the amazing blanket work, and what gave you the impetus to use those objects and create those works, and how do they speak to you?
I started working with blankets in part because I thought about how I had experienced them in my family and in our community and tribe. So we oftentimes would give a blanket away to acknowledge someone for being witness to an important life event. And this this practice is held in common with other Indigenous communities. And I started knowing that I wanted to, like, make a column of folded and stacked blankets that would kind of be ladder-like and connect earth and sky. And for me, that ladder was sort of like this axis for, like, Sky Woman and our creation story, but it also, I loved this associations with, like, the domestic space of a linen cabinet and, like, pulling a blanket out and like thinking that they all could tumble down. And I also thought of the conifers of the Pacific Northwest and, totem poles and the sculptor Brancusi's endless column. So there were all kinds of different associations. But one of the things that I realized really quickly, I was getting these blankets from thrift stores, and it was anything $5 and under. It was the advent of polar fleece. So everybody was getting rid of their wool blankets. I could get a blanket for like $5 or under. And it was like a tube of paint, like a really massive tube of paint. And so that was kind of how I started. But then I realized that I was working with a friend, and he was like, oh, that blanket reminds me of my grandmother. And he kind of started going into story. And I quickly realized that blankets are markers for memory and story. And in a way, we're received in blankets, and we depart this world in a blanket. And we're constantly imprinting on these humble objects. So that, when I started working with blankets, I thought it was going to be sort of a project. Like I would use this material and then move on to other materials. So I even sort of sit here in disbelief that I'm still working with that material. But I think part of the thing with any of the materials I use, I think that they are storied, and I have so much to learn from them. And so I'm navigating this dance and relationship with them.
One of the works in the exhibition is blankets, but has note cards with it. Tell us about that work.
Yeah, that piece was created during the pandemic, and it was in anticipation of an exhibition I was doing with Chnúpa Hanska-Luger called Each Other, that was curated by John Lukovic at the Denver Art Museum. And it was traveling to Emory University's Carlos Museum and also to the Peabody Essex Museum. And a show about collaboration struck at the same time the pandemic did. So it meant that all of a sudden trying to collaborate was really a lot more challenging. But for that particular project, I worked with the institutions, the collaborating institutions, and we did a public call inviting community members to contribute blankets and a blanket story. And I think one of the things that's so special to me about that particular sculpture is that it's the blanket stories in them, but they're about this very specific moment and time. Not all of the blankets are about the pandemic, but there are definitely there was a woman who had been making masks and PPE, and she had made a quilt out of that. And there was another woman who had taught herself how to knit because she was going to send this blanket to a newborn family member. And the first blanket, I think the one that was contributed to the stack, was sort of wonky, but it was also this cocoon and covering and safe place during this very uncertain time. And the stories kind of go on from there. But it's a pretty special piece to me. Yeah.
One of the pieces in the show is blankets in bronze, and it was at Greg Kucera's gallery in Seattle. And when I'm up there with my mother and I saw that piece, and my heart just swooned like I do over everything she does. And I said to Greg, I said, I want that. And he says, well, it's already taken. I said, we just got here. The show's opening tomorrow. What? And I turned around and looked at my mother, and she had this grin on her face. I said, Mom, I want that one. She said, well, I said, well, why don't we split it? Well, and she paid for it, but I'm fortunate that my parents' collection came into our foundation so that we could continue to share the amazing work that she collected. That wasn't the first time that happened, but anyway. The I-beams that you've done, talk to us about those. They're stunning.
Yeah, well, so in the Haudenosaunee or, Iroquois, in our community, there are men, and probably men and women, there are people now who have, and for a long time, worked as iron workers. And we call our iron workers skywalkers. And I have to share that I was, as a kid, saw Star Wars in the theater, first run in the theater. And I remember kind of feeling I remember feeling a little bit seen by having, Luke Skywalker, and knowing that I had this other association with that word Skywalker. But one thing that I think is really awesome is we work with this guy named Abe at Eastside Steel, and they've helped us on a lot of different projects. And Abe, he was like, why am I putting this text on this I-beam? And I started telling him about iron workers, and And one thing that's really interesting is in the Gowanus neighborhood of Brooklyn near Boerum Hill, in the 50s, there were so many Mohawk ironworkers that there was actually a mass that would happen in the Mohawk language. And I think that we like don't think of like that kind of, I don't know, that contribution by Haudenosaunee people to building Manhattan bridges and skyscrapers, but also like that work was happening all over the United States and Canada. So there was, back to Abe. Abe, he I was telling him about our ironworkers and he said, you know, steel is the most recycled material in the world. And your ancestors, like they could have like touched that piece, which I thought was like so great. And this is like why I love collaborating with people. And it's like, sometimes it's just about finding the right, like not the right people, but there are people who there are definitely probably some steel shops that wouldn't be interested in doing the crazy things I'm interested in doing, but like you find the right collaborator and it's just like, it's really fun. And then you just keep making stories together.
Speaking of ancestors, the Turtle Island, the big neon piece you'll all see, tell us about that. What was Turtle Island?
Well, in our creation story, this is the super abridged version, but like Sky Woman falls from, or is pushed from a hole in the sky world. And as she falls, she's first helped by birds and then by animals as she lands on what we now refer to as Turtle Island. And our clans recognize this historic relationship. So Turtle Island in our community is North America. For some indigenous tribes, it's the planet Earth. And I have been thinking about like how could we steward this place differently if we called it by an indigenous name? And one of the things that I'm really hoping to do in the future, it's in the works, but it's like a long time coming, is like I'm interested in having this large neon piece call out, not just to people, but to the water and to, you know, birds and animals and the mountains and kind of call out to people. And I think one of the things I was really excited about with this project being in an external location, which it kind of almost is, because it's just like you can see it from the street and it's on at night now. But I think sometimes is for indigenous artists, I think that we oftentimes get put in this place of having to be an educator or an interpreter. And I kind of like the idea of not telling people what Turtle Island is and putting the responsibility on people who see that text. And the truth of the matter is, like, I think that text is like kind of poetic. And you don't need to know what Turtle Island is to not have a relationship with that phrase. But the other thing is by putting it out in the world, you know, stitched in neon, I feel like I am kind of, I'm inviting you, like, or in a way, like forcing you to say something that affirms this Seneca woman, you know, which I think is kind of, I don't know, like I don't know. I mean, we go to, you know, we all go to school. We're at a school. We are encouraged to read things and write things and see things. So it's like kind of just feels very liberating to put that out in the world. But also, I'm very interested in having conversations about Turtle Island and how we steward our relationship to this place. And that's like one another, that's animals, that's the air, it's the earth underneath our feet.
The word storyteller has often been used to describe you. Is that a word you would use to describe your art?
Well, it's the name of the book. So I guess so. I mean, I think the cool thing about, like, yes, and like, if you're a storyteller, so my mom likes to say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as hard. And I know I have to always work on the listening thing more, But I think that the cool thing about like being a storyteller is you're also like a story receiver, you know? Or I think like recently I've been working with these grown radio towers in my work. And one of the things that I'm so interested in I'm interested in that form, but I'm also interested in how this is true for blankets. It's like they're receivers and amplifiers of stories, right? And so I think that I'm that too. I also like to think of myself as like a custodian.
You know, you work in so many different mediums. It's so exciting. The big wood carvings, the tapestries, the glass, the brass. How do you decide first? Where do the ideas come from, and then how do you decide what medium to use to express that theme?
The ideas come from, I kind of feel like the ideas are sort of like a snowball and they get momentum. And I mean, ideas, Jane would say that I'm not short on ideas. She always says, Maria's not short on ideas. But I do struggle with figuring out which ideas I want to like explore. And like, you know, there's the work of being an artist is, you know, it's like, it's the best job in the world. And then it's also like so challenging and hard because it's hard to like, sorry, I feel like I'm going off track. So where do the ideas come from? I mean, I think actually everything I make, like when I'm making one thing, it's already like opening up the next idea. Does that make sense? But like sometimes then there's just things that gestate for a really long, there's just things that gestate for a really long time until it's time for that idea to like really get its time.
And in terms of what medium to use, the carving versus the glass, the brass, the bronze, how do you decide what to do when you're so good at so many things?
Well, I don't feel good at them when I'm in it. I have this friend who likes to say there's like two types of artists. There's artists who are riggers and there's artists who are designers. And a designer sort of like plots their way and like has this idea of like how everything's going to unfold. And I would say I'm more of a rigger. And a rigger is like, oh, I've got this idea. I really can't wait to do it. And like, I get in so deep that I can't go back. That's my secret sauce. It's like, just like, you know, you're just like, oh, whoa. But like, I also, yeah.
Talk about Crow Shadow, and let's talk about your collaborator, but talk about Crow Shadow for a second.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say in regards to like, Crow Shadow is a super special place. And I mean, for me, like getting out of graduate school and moving to Oregon and then like being able to like work, well, getting introduced to James Labrador, let alone like work at Crow Shadow has been sort of like this, you know, amazing experience. And I think it's important to know that like when I was in art school, I couldn't find any books on Native artists. There was maybe one book that came out of Canada that had Jim Labrador's work in it. And so like it's kind of amazing to like meet Jim, end up like going to Conduit to the Mainstream Symposium where I met all these other like Native artists. And I oftentimes like joke that I'm the Crow Shadow poster kid because I had an experience at Crow Shadow in which I met Truman Lowe and Joe Feddersen and Edgar Heap of Birds and Kay Walking Stick, and then all these like, and people from different presses as well. And honestly, almost every experience like that I can point back to, like it connects, it leads back to Crow Shadow. And so like, not only is it a special place to make prints, which I've done probably 5 times there, but it also is like, I think when I like Crow Shadow and because Jim created it as this gift back to the community. And it's a like kind of this nationally recognized print studio that prints with people from all over the United States and the world. And it's a place for like native artists, but non-native artists too. And it's just this incredible space. And he figured out a way to like make everybody come to him instead of for Jim to have to fly everywhere, because he doesn't like that.
We had a fascinating conversation earlier today, and I forget how we got quite into it, but I was saying that in my real estate business, I've always run scared. As I said to my team, for most of my life, I was like 90% scared. Now I'm about 60 as I've gotten diversified the portfolio, and it's bigger, and our debt's down, and whatever, and I love it. I love being on that gangplank, pushing the acquisitions, development, whatever. And I was mentioning this about just running scared now. I remember in my late 20s, I wanted to yell up to the stars and say, why? Why are you doing this to me? Every time I feel like everything's going really well, shit happens, okay? And that's why I love all the civic work and so forth, because that's where we can come together collegially and do some things, whether it's the Bybee Lakes Hope Center or all the things we do, whatever. And just that you can yell to the stars and feel good about working with others towards making our communities and around the nation a better place. And so we were having this conversation, and what did you say?
I said, oh my gosh, I've never heard it phrased that way, but I feel that way too. It's like I'm constantly just, it just feels like I'm choosing this, so this is not a complaint, but it's just like it nonstop. And I think part of it too is, for a long time, I think it took almost turning 50 for me to call myself an artist, but like as if somebody could take that away from me, which is foolish. It's something that's mine, but I do feel like I run a little scared. And it bothers me because I don't think it's the right way to operate, but I think my team, they see that energy of oh, we gotta go do this. Yeah.
So I first saw your work, and as you know, I buy from the gut, and I just saw your work and was swept away. And we helped to buy a lot of work, and I remember down at Jane's once when you had those fabulous big tapestries, and oh my God, there were 3 gorgeous ones, and I sat there trying to figure out what I could afford and whatever, and I just couldn't pick. So yes, we bought all 3, and I'm glad we did. And we did the book for you, and then we helped you at your work traveling nationally. And my God, if I took the time now to talk about all the places that have your work and the honors you've gotten that they were just discussing and so forth. What's it like now to have come from, where there were a number of us that saw your work and believed in you and were so fortunate to hear your voice and just be swept away by the carvings, the tapestries, the blankets, everything. Now you're getting so well known nationally. We had the show for you at the Print Center in New York, and had tons of people, and we got writers there and others. What's this like, this sort of new fame, and how are you feeling about yourself?
I feel like it might be time for some a conversation about jingles. I will say I still run scared though, so
Let me ask you, do you feel a sense of, I remember, we've had more exhibitions of women, of artists of color, a huge number of native artists, plus a lot of traditional native art too. And it's wonderful to see. You said something earlier, when you're an art student, you couldn't find any examples of books and other things where, just as a number of the folks of color that I've worked with have said, they maybe were taken to art museums and all they saw was black people in subservient positions and so forth, and to see today people that look like them now in major arts is a whole different feeling. Do you feel a sense of responsibility, being a member of the Seneca Nation, to be a voice for, your work reflects your legacy, your history, your values, and so forth, but when you sit down to create art, do you feel a sense of a manifest destiny that you've been blessed with this talent to help get this work out?
I think in regards to more doors opening, I mean, honestly, I'm just like, okay, let's all like jam our feet in so the door can't be shut. And the truth of the matter is, like, I've seen this like with my mom's work in Indian education. It's like there's progress, but like there's also backsliding. And the truth of the matter is, it's like I think that it's important to just like be vigilant, and I don't take it for granted. So like when you're talking about like having success, it's like I really like I'm just as good as like I just always want to make my next best body of work. Like, and so yeah.
And speaking of next body of work, are there some particular artists that you just admire and you see their work and you say, wow, that's good, I wish I could? So who are they and how do they influence you?
Well, so I was talking about James Lavador, and I think like with James, I think part of it is just remember like this, like he's a person who's like making like his work, but he also has like really contributed and given back to his community. And so I think that that's like something that I am constantly aware of and like I want to do. And I think of that too with like people, like with some people who've since passed, and I would say Bob DeZono again, and also Jean Quick-to-See Smith. I mean, she was a tireless educator, and she like worked so hard to tell people that there were hundreds of Native artists when people were telling her there weren't any, you know? So I think like that, so those are two people, and I don't know, there's Alison Saar, there's like a bunch of people whose work I really admire. I think like it's their humanity that like might influence me, and that's really important.
The big Armory show in New York that was 2 weeks ago, the booth was filled with your stuff, and honestly, she's bristling with all my compliments about her. But trust me, in New York, with all the art people I talked to, that booth and her work was the talk of all those galleries and the people in New York. As your reputation grows and others see the wonderful creative genius that comes out of you in terms of this work. What was it like going to that show and seeing all your work there as you, with one gallery after another, shows your work? What was that like?
I mean, art fairs, I think you know that art fairs are nice because you can see a bunch of people and art all at the same time, but it's overwhelming. It's like an overwhelming place. So I mean, it's definitely an honor to have work taken there. It's an incredible investment, and in many ways a risk for galleries to do that work. And so to be represented by Tandem and Catherine Clark Gallery and Mark Strauss there, you know, I really appreciate these people who are partners and collaborators.
Let me ask you that, and I'll finish with this question is, Tandem Press is at the University of Indiana, Bloomington, and there was a wonderful woman, Paula Pachenko. What? Madison. Tandem Press is owned by the university, and Paula Pachenko was there for 34 years, just retired. There's a new person, and we buy everything they make. And what's it like going there and working at Tandem? And
well, I think, well, first of all, Tandem is incredible because they just have all these like tools and toys, like I call it toys. Like, and I think though one thing I would share about working at different presses is like different people have different specialties. So like here in Portland, we have like Maloney Printing, which is incredible to have that caliber shop in Portland. And like they're really great with like these printmaking techniques where you're using Japanese paper and they do photogravure. I mean, they can do everything, but there's some things that like, I don't think you could find anybody in the United States who does this particular thing the way they do. And so I think at Tandem, it was just like, for me being there the first time, it was sort of this like that sort of getting indoctrinated into like these new relationships. It's a little harder the first time when you're printing with people, even though there's excitement. Like I think the thing that was exciting for me is I went to Madison on a trip to talk with a collector, and then I was taken to Tandem just as a like little side field trip. And when I was sitting down, that's when Paula said, "Hey, would you like to print with us?" And I was just gobsmacked. I had no idea that invitation was coming. So I think that, and they just have all this amazing equipment. But I would say that every press has their specialty, and then it's really the bond you have with the printers and the more time you work with them, the more you know each other, and kind of the more the creative process just kind of blossoms.
And that is the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Yeah.
Tell us, before we have this exciting performance to finish up, tell us about bells a bit and your use of it in your work and the spectacular work that we commissioned, the work you're going to see. And I thought it was going to be, this. Well, all I can tell you is when I walked in about 2 weeks ago and saw it, oh my gosh, this is just breathtakingly spectacular. I hope you're all as blown away as I am by the amazing work she did here. But tell us about bells. Why bells?
Well, actually, you know what? I think rather than me telling you about tin jingles, I'm going to take this opportunity to invite my friend Acosia Red Elk up here, and maybe we can just informally have a little stand-up conversation.
Wonderful.
And then eventually Acosia is going to dance for us this evening. I think they were gonna. Yeah, we'll stand. Hey, Acosia.
Hello, everybody.
So I wanted to share that I worked on this project with the Portland Garment Factory to first sort of explore how to create these jingle sculptures. And they were going to eventually be shipped to the Kavi Gupta Gallery in New York. And I wanted to do something that acknowledged them before they got sent off. And so I learned about Acosia Red Elk. And I can't believe that Acosia lives in Oregon. And I wrote her with I wrote you so wanting to get to know you and hoping that you would be interested in this, but I also thought, oh, I don't want to, be disrespectful. There were just a bunch of different things that went through my head in sending that email. But lo and behold, Acosia said yes. And she came and danced at the Portland Garment Factory. And then we've had a number of collaborations since then. And so I'm going to, invite Acosia to tell you a little bit more about the jingle dress dance and tin jingles.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to stand with Marie. She is one of the most incredible artists. Her art just transcends dimensions and really brings emotion and feeling out of people. Marie had sent me an email asking me to be a part of this project, and I went straight to the link that she sent me, which showed photos of the clouds and maybe even a video of the clouds, and it was an instant yes. One of the neat things about the human experience for me is the call and response in life, and that was a call for me, and it was the jingles that were kind of encouraging this collaboration. And I knew instantly that I wanted to be a part of this project. I only had one day, remember? I was like, if we can get me to Portland in one day and then get me out of Portland. And I got to come to the Portland Garment Factory and do an activation, what they called, and I danced with the clouds. We had a beautiful reception there, and then the clouds traveled to Chicago. I got to dance with them in Chicago. I got to dance with the clouds in Salem, Massachusetts. And Marie and I have kind of built this relationship around these clouds. Jingles are man-made, obviously, but they have become a part of our culture over the past 100 years. The jingle dress comes from the Great Lakes area, the Anishinaabe people who you might know as the Ojibwe people. of the Great Lakes. And this is one of the newer dances in our culture, in the powwow circuit, which is a competitive dance circuit. This dress came from a dream. It was a dream that took place during a pandemic in the 1900s, the early 1900s, around 1915, 1917. There was a pandemic, and the people would go to the longhouse to pray, and the men would sing songs, and many people were sick. And a young girl named Maggie White was very ill, and they told her family that she only had a small amount of time left to live. And her father, who was a medicine man, went into ceremony. And it was there that he was given the gift to bring back to the people. He was brought into the Northern Lights by the Northern Lights spirit people. And they told him about the future. This is an old story, the old story that was given to me by an elder when he said, "Do you know the real story of the jingle dress dance?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he told me this story, and it just blew my mind. He talked about this being given to us by the Aurora Borealis, and that they gave him the sound to bring back to the people, that it would heal them at the cellular level, and that they could use this sound to heal their people from this time on. And he knew that the sound was to be created by women. And when he came out of this vision, he instructed these women to make these dresses. And I know that they played with a lot of different types of materials, different objects, shells, pieces of wood, deer hooves. And they could never really find that sound that he remembered from his vision. And it was at the time that Hudson Bay Company was already trading with Native peoples. And it was the chewing tobacco lids that they snipped the edge off of and rolled it into a cone and hit them together, and they found the sound. I think maybe the sound found them. And this sound was created by women. They made these dresses that would make this sound, and every cone that they sewed onto the dress, they put a prayer into. And they would only work on the dress when they felt in good spirits. And that when they would put the dress on, they would become a vessel for healing. And that every step that they took, they would think good thoughts, because their sound was rippling outward from their body to heal the people. The women made these dresses and were asked, because women didn't dance. It was only the men who danced a long time ago. The women would stand on the side and they would bounce and they would support the dancers. And they asked if these women could step onto the floor and share this dance with the people. And these 3 women came out dancing in these sacred colors, and the young girl sat up in curiosity, and she got up and started dancing with them. Maggie White ended up to live over 100 years old. And they started traveling outside of the community, and they started traveling further and further, sharing the jingle dress dance, and it became so popular, and it became a ceremonial dance that is still practiced today. The jingle dance has become one of the most popular contemporary dance styles in the powwow dance circuit today. Powwows are celebrations of song and dance that are held across Indian country, Turtle Island, Canada, and the United States, where we gather with different tribes to sing and dance. And as we move into the future, everything evolves. We're always progressing, and we're always evolving and getting creative and learning new ways with song and dance. Song and dance is universal. And so Native people still gather today to have these dances, and the jingle dress has become one of the most prominent styles of dance. Yet it is still a ceremonial dance. And so they're still using this dress to this day in longhouses in the Great Lakes area to hold ceremonies, to celebrate good things happening, to pray for something bad that happened or somebody who needs prayers. This dress has really created itself, I think. I think the jingles are speaking, and they have a lot to say. And everything's a call and response. It's the drum beat that makes our body move, and then the jingles talk. And that is up to you. It's always a collaboration, just like Marie's work. She displays it, the people see it, we witness the art, and we have a response to it I think that's what art is. It's the response that we have to it. And so the jingles are very much the same. When you see the jingles, when you hear the jingles, with her art, the jingle clouds, you get to touch them and feel them. It becomes interactive. You become a part of it. The jingles are healing, and they do their own work. You know that they say that our voice can be heard at a distant galaxy, and there's a response that happens there. And I always wonder, what is it like when the jingle sound travels across the galaxies, and how cosmic that is, and how connected we are to everything through sound. And so it really is an honor to be here, to be able to dance with you today. I'm so proud of you, Marie.
Oh,
She just
thank you, Acosia.
Yeah, she just won the Heinz Award yesterday, which is a huge deal. I've been asked to come and share the jingle dance with you today in honor of the jingle clouds. We want to show you what the jingles really do when they are in action in a dance style. The jingles, they bring emotion out of you. They make you feel something. It's always a collaboration between the dancer and the audience because there's a feeling that is had. There's some type of response that your body has. I always say, if you feel like crying, let yourself cry. Like, say a prayer for yourself, for your family, for our world, for our nation, and for our communities. When we dance, we pray, and when we pray, we heal. And song and dance is one of the main things in art that's going to keep us close to our humanness as we move into a more political and technological world. And so it's an honor to be able to share a traditional contemporary dance for you today. Yeah. So the first song I'll be dancing is a straight dance. It's a freestyle style of dance. And then I have a surprise for the second song.